The year is 1944. Europe burns in the fires of war. The Third Reich, once a terrifying machine sweeping across the continent, now faces mounting pressure on all fronts. The Allies have landed in Normandy, opening a Western front. In the east, the Soviet juggernaut pushes relentlessly westward, reclaiming territories lost in the disastrous early days of Operation Barbarossa. Germany, though still formidable, is bleeding resources, men, and morale. Amid this chaos, a plan begins to take shape, a plan that could alter the course of history forever. Inside the high-ranking circles of the Wehrmacht and the German resistance, discontent has reached its boiling point. The architects of this conspiracy are not foreign spies or distant partisans. They are German officers, many of them decorated heroes of earlier campaigns. They believe the Führer has led the nation to ruin. His obsession with total war, his refusal to negotiate peace, and his disastrous strategic choices have doomed Germany to destruction. For these men, assassinating Adolf Hitler is no longer treason. It is salvation. Among the conspirators stands a tall, stoic figure, Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg. Gravely wounded in North Africa, having lost an eye, his right hand, and 2 fingers on his left, Stauffenberg is a man forged in suffering, but also in conviction. He sees Hitler not as a leader, but as a tyrant dragging Germany into the abyss. The conspirators, bound by a sense of duty and desperation, hatch a plan under the codename Operation Valkyrie. Officially, Valkyrie is a contingency to deploy the reserve army in case of civil unrest. But these officers intend to repurpose it. Once Hitler is dead, they will seize control of Berlin, neutralize the SS, and negotiate peace with the Allies before Germany is annihilated. The chosen day is July 20th, 1944. Hitler is scheduled to attend a briefing at his Eastern Front headquarters, the Wolf's Lair. Security is tight, but Stauffenberg has access as a staff officer. He will carry a bomb concealed in his briefcase, place it in the conference room, and slip away before the explosion. It is audacious, perilous, and their only chance. And so, the morning dawns on what could have been the most consequential day of the 20th century. Stauffenberg arrives at the Wolf's Lair carrying his briefcase of death. Around him, the machinery of the Reich hums with blind obedience. Hitler greets his officers, smiling faintly beneath his signature mustache, unaware that the shadow of death hovers inches away. The briefing begins. Maps of the Eastern Front lie spread across the table. Soviet advances, German retreats, lines on paper that tell the story of an empire collapsing under its own hubris. Stauffenberg excuses himself, citing a phone call. In that moment, he slips the briefcase beneath the heavy oak table as close to Hitler as possible. Time seems to slow. Every tick of the clock is thunder in his ears. He leaves the room, heart pounding, praying that fate will do the rest. Moments later, a deafening blast rips through the conference room. Flames, smoke, screams, chaos erupts in the Wolf's Lair. But in our reality, Hitler survived, injured, enraged, and vowing vengeance. The plot failed. Thousands were executed in the brutal purge that followed, including Stauffenberg himself. The war dragged on for another 9 agonizing months, leaving tens of millions more dead. But in this alternate history, everything changes. The bomb kills Hitler instantly. The Führer of the Third Reich is no more. The room is obliterated, leaving no doubt. The Nazi regime, long held together by the iron grip of one man, now trembles on the brink of collapse. The question is, what happens next? Would Germany sue for peace? Would the Allies accept? Would the SS seize power and plunge Germany into civil war? And what of the Soviets? Would Stalin allow the Western Allies to dictate terms? The assassination of Hitler in July 1944 does not end the war immediately, but it tears open a new path, a dangerous and uncertain one. In the next part, we explore the immediate aftermath of Hitler's death, the conspirators' bold move to seize Berlin, the reactions of the Wehrmacht and the SS, and whether Operation Valkyrie succeeds in preventing total chaos. This is the story of a world where the tyrant falls, but history is still up for grabs. The explosion at the Wolf's Lair tears through the conference room like a hammer of doom. In this alternate reality, there are no miraculous survivals. Adolf Hitler, the Führer of Nazi Germany, is dead, blown apart in a storm of fire and splintered wood. His personal staff, several high-ranking officers, and 2 of his most trusted aides perish with him. The blast echoes far beyond the forests of East Prussia. Within hours, the news spreads like wildfire across the German military command. For the first time in 12 years, the Reich is leaderless. Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg, already en route to Berlin, receives confirmation through coded signals. The Führer is dead. His heart races. The impossible has happened. Now the real test begins. The conspirators activate Operation Valkyrie without hesitation. General Friedrich Ulbricht and Ludwig Beck, former chief of the General Staff, issue orders to mobilize the reserve army under the pretext of quelling an alleged SS coup. They claim Himmler and the SS have staged an uprising to seize power after Hitler's death. Radio transmissions crackle with urgent commands. Secure government buildings, disarm the SS, take control of communications. Across Berlin, troops loyal to the Wehrmacht march into action, unaware they are pawns in a coup to overthrow the Nazi state. In the Reich Chancellery, confusion reigns. Hermann Göring, the self-proclaimed successor, under Hitler's will, has not yet learned the truth. Joseph Goebbels, the master of propaganda, scrambles to confirm the Führer's fate. The SS, under Heinrich Himmler, senses something is wrong. Their networks report abnormal troop movements in Berlin. Rumors of Hitler's assassination ignite panic and fury among the elite guard. The Third Reich, built on fear, obedience, and the cult of one man, teeters on the edge of implosion. Meanwhile, the Valkyrie conspirators move swiftly. They arrest key SS officers in the capital. Control of radio stations and telegraphs is seized. Berliners, exhausted by years of bombing and deprivation, watch in silence as soldiers take positions in the streets. For a brief, fleeting moment, it seems as if the coup might succeed. Then the fractures begin to show. Not all generals support the uprising. Some hesitate, fearing that even in death, Hitler's grip lingers. Others worry about the Allies. Will they negotiate with a Germany stained by years of atrocities? Or will they demand unconditional surrender, as Roosevelt and Churchill have declared? These doubts paralyze men who hold the power to decide Germany's fate. Every hour of indecision strengthens the SS, who rally their forces with ruthless determination. In East Prussia, Himmler learns the truth. Hitler is dead. His grief is cold, practical, a calculation. For years, Himmler has harbored ambitions of supreme power. Now he sees his chance. He orders SS divisions to march on Berlin. Heinrich Himmler intends to crush the conspirators, avenge the Führer, and position himself as Germany's new leader. But in this alternate timeline, the Valkyrie conspirators act with greater speed and unity than in reality. General Erwin von Witzleben, a respected field marshal, declares himself commander of the Wehrmacht. Beck steps forward as provisional head of state. Orders are sent to arrest Himmler and Göring. SS strongholds in Berlin are stormed. Gunfire erupts in the streets as Loyalist and SS units clash. For the first time since 1933, the Nazi regime is fighting itself. As night falls on July 20th, Berlin is a city of whispers and shadows. Trains grind to a halt. Barricades rise at key intersections. The coup hangs in the balance. If the conspirators can hold the capital and neutralize Himmler, they may present a new German government to the world, a government ready to end the war. Across Europe, Allied leaders receive urgent intelligence reports. Hitler is dead. A coup is underway in Germany. Churchill reacts with cautious optimism, but Roosevelt remains firm. Unconditional surrender. Stalin, ever suspicious, sees opportunity in chaos. His armies are only weeks away from Poland. Will he slow his advance or strike harder to seize Berlin before the West can act? The fate of millions now depends on the decisions made in the next 48 hours. A continent drenched in blood trembles on the edge of a new chapter, one that could end the war sooner or plunge it into even greater darkness. The night of July 20th bleeds into dawn, and Berlin wakes to a city on the brink. Soldiers occupy intersections, armored vehicles rumble through the streets, and government buildings bristle with rifle barrels. Rumors swirl like smoke. The Führer is dead. The SS has staged a coup, or perhaps the Allies have landed in Germany itself. Ordinary citizens cling to scraps of information, peering through blackout curtains, listening to radios that whisper half-truths. No one knows the full story, because the story itself is still being written. In the Bendler block, headquarters of the coup, the conspirators brace themselves for the storm they know is coming. General Ludwig Beck assumes the role of provisional head of state, his face pale but resolute. Field Marshal von Witzleben, summoned from retirement, takes command of the army. Their message is clear. Hitler is dead, and Germany must end this war. Declarations are prepared for broadcast to the German people and the world, promising a government that will restore law and negotiate peace. But first, they must survive the next few hours. Across the city, the SS refuses to yield. Heinrich Himmler, now fully aware of the coup, issues a chilling order. Crush the traitors. No mercy. Waffen-SS units loyal to him pour into Berlin from nearby garrisons. Black uniformed men set up machine gun nests, storm roadblocks, and engage Wehrmacht soldiers in deadly firefights. The streets echo with bursts of gunfire and the grinding tracks of half-tracks. Berlin, the heart of the Reich, becomes a battlefield. For Stauffenberg, it is a race against time. His gamble has paid off. Hitler is dead, but their victory is far from secure. Communications remain patchy. Some army districts obey the Valkyrie orders, others hesitate. In Munich and Vienna, garrisons begin arresting SS officers, but in Hamburg and the Rhineland, loyalty to the regime runs deep. Every delay allows Himmler to consolidate his power. Already, Goebbels has escaped arrest and is using clandestine radio broadcasts to brand the conspirators as traitors and British agents. The propaganda machine, wounded but alive, spits venom into the veins of the Reich. By mid-morning, the first SS counterattacks slam into the Bendler Block perimeter. Wehrmacht soldiers man sandbag positions, returning fire as mortar shells pound the courtyard. Inside, the conspirators work feverishly to send orders to loyal units and prevent the collapse of their fragile network. Stauffenberg, his empty sleeve pinned neatly to his tunic, moves from room to room with a pistol on his hip, a living symbol of defiance. "Hold your ground," he tells the men. "Germany's future depends on these hours." Beyond Berlin, the ripples spread. In Paris, General Karl Heinrich von Stülpnagel seizes SS and Gestapo officers, declaring martial law in the French capital. In Prague and Warsaw, Wehrmacht commanders follow suit. For the first time, the Nazi apparatus is cracking. But the question remains, will it break apart completely or harden into something even worse under Himmler's iron will? The Allies watch the chaos with cold calculation. In London, Churchill convenes his war cabinet. Reports confirm Hitler's death, but warn that hardline Nazis may still fight on. Roosevelt cables Churchill, "We maintain unconditional surrender, no compromise with Nazi remnants." Stalin, predictably, is silent, but his armies roar forward. Operation Bagration has shattered the German lines on the Eastern Front. Soviet tanks thunder through Belarus, driving toward Warsaw. The Red Army smells blood, and Berlin. As night falls again on July 21st, the coup's outcome hangs by a thread. The Bendler Block is under siege. Ammunition runs low. SS troops mass for a final assault. Stauffenberg and Beck exchange grim glances. They know that if they fail now, it means death, not only for themselves, but for any hope of ending the war quickly. Yet somewhere deep inside, a spark of hope remains. They have achieved what few dared imagine. Hitler is gone. His shadow no longer strangles Germany. Even if the conspirators perish, the Nazi state is fatally weakened. A new struggle has begun, not just for power, but for the soul of a nation. In the next part, we enter the crucible of those desperate days, the bloody fight for Berlin, Himmler's bid for power, and the shocking choices faced by the Allies as Germany teeters between collapse and civil war. July 22nd, 1944. The second day of Germany's reckoning dawns under a sky streaked with smoke. Berlin is a city under siege by its own armies. The Bendler Block, nerve center of the Valkyrie conspirators, stands battered yet defiant. Its windows are shattered, its walls pocked with bullet holes. Inside, men who only yesterday were loyal officers of the Wehrmacht now fight as rebels against the monstrous state they once served. The situation is desperate. SS troops, reinforced by elements of the Gestapo, press their attack with ruthless determination. Mortar rounds thud into the courtyard. Machine gun fire rakes the facade. The conspirators return fire, their dwindling ammunition stacked in bloodied crates. The corridors echo with shouted orders and the clatter of boots. Colonel Stauffenberg, his face set in grim resolve, moves among the defenders like a figure carved from iron. He knows the truth. Even if they hold out for another day, time is running out. Outside Berlin, Himmler's grip tightens. The Reichsfuhrer SS, seizing the reins of power with icy precision, declares a state of emergency. Over the radio, his voice crackles with venom. Traitors have murdered the Führer. The fatherland must be purged of this poison. Across Germany, SS units fan out, rounding up suspected conspirators. Summary executions multiply. Gallows rise in city squares. The Nazi regime, wounded but not slain, bares its fangs in a frenzy of revenge. Yet something is different, something Himmler cannot control. The spell of Hitler's infallibility is broken. Across the Wehrmacht, uncertainty festers. In army districts far from Berlin, officers whisper, if Hitler is gone, why continue the war? On the Western Front, soldiers glance toward the Channel coast, where Allied artillery rumbles beyond the horizon. In the East, shattered divisions retreat before the Soviet tide. For many, the dream of victory died with the man who preached it. The question is no longer loyalty, it is survival. Inside the Bendler block, General Ludwig Beck gathers his remaining strength for one final gamble. If Berlin falls to Himmler, the Reich falls with it, he tells his comrades. They agree on a desperate plan. Contact the Allies directly. Somewhere in the chaos, they must send envoys westward, men who can reach British or American lines and plead for an armistice. Not surrender, not yet, but an end to the killing before Germany is reduced to ashes. The task falls to a young officer, swift and resourceful. Under cover of darkness, he slips out through a shattered side door, carrying documents signed by Beck himself, proof that Hitler is dead and a provisional government seeks peace. His destination is the Western Front, where Allied tanks grind through the hedgerows of Normandy. If he makes it, history may pivot on his words. If he fails, the conspirators' blood will soak the floors of the Bendler block in vain. Meanwhile, the Allies debate furiously. In London, Churchill pounds his desk. We have no proof these men can deliver Germany, he warns. Roosevelt agrees. We deal with governments, not plots. Yet others, like Eisenhower, see opportunity. If the German army collapses in on itself, the Western Allies might drive to Berlin before the Soviets. But time is short, and mistrust runs deep. By nightfall, the Bendler block is a cauldron. Flames lick the outer walls. Ammunition runs dry. Himmler's men prepare for the final assault. Inside, the conspirators know what awaits them if captured. They destroy documents, burn files, and steel themselves for the inevitable. Stauffenberg loads his pistol with trembling fingers, his last act of defiance against a regime he once served. He whispers to a comrade, "Better to die for Germany than live for Hitler." As SS troops storm the courtyard, the defenders fight with feral desperation. Grenades roll across marble floors. Smoke chokes the air. Men fall cursing or praying. Stauffenberg, shot twice, collapses against a blood-stained wall. His last breath escapes in a hoarse whisper. Long live Holy Germany. By dawn on July 23rd, the Bendler block is silent. Himmler stands amid the wreckage, his black-clad guards at his side. The traitors lie dead or shackled. Yet even as he savors his triumph, the Reichsfuhrer knows the truth. This was no isolated mutiny. This was the cracking of an edifice built on terror and lies. Hitler's death has unleashed forces he cannot yet contain. And beyond Berlin, the storm gathers. The Soviets surge westward, relentless. The Allies break out from Normandy, and in the shadows, whispers of a new German state linger, dreams that refuse to die, even in the face of Himmler's terror. In the final part, we witness the last convulsions of the Third Reich, a power struggle without Hitler, a race between Allies and Soviets for the heart of Europe, and the question that will define the century: does the coup change the fate of the world, or does it merely hasten the inevitable? July 23, 1944. The smoke of battle still clings to the ruins of the Bendler block. Bodies of the conspirators lie in pools of blood, their bid to change history extinguished in a storm of gunfire. Heinrich Himmler surveys the carnage with cold satisfaction. The coup is crushed, and the Reichsfuhrer SS now stands as the most powerful man in Germany. But even as he tightens his black-gloved grip, cracks spread like fractures through glass. The man who aspired to rule the Reich finds himself atop a collapsing empire. Himmler wastes no time consolidating control. He proclaims himself head of state, invoking Hitler's spirit and declaring that the Reich will fight on. Goebbels, miraculously spared from capture, hurls the full force of propaganda behind this new order. The Führer lives in the will of the German people. The traitors are dead. Their blood has washed away their treason. Posters appear overnight bearing Himmler's stern visage, but the magic is gone. Hitler's aura of invincibility, the myth that held a nation in thrall, died with him in the wolf's lair. In the Wehrmacht, the mood is grim and uncertain. Many officers, secretly relieved that Hitler is gone, recoil from Himmler's leadership. The SS may have crushed the coup in Berlin, but their grip beyond the capital is tenuous. In Paris, General von Stülpnagel is executed for his role in the plot, yet resistance simmers in army circles. Desertions increase. Entire units surrender to the Allies, seeking mercy before the Gestapo's noose tightens. The once mighty German war machine begins to devour itself in paranoia and reprisals. Meanwhile, the war outside Germany's borders rages on. In the east, Stalin's armies surge forward like a tidal wave. Operation Bagration obliterates Army Group Center, tearing open the German front in Belarus. Soviet tank columns roar toward Warsaw, their guns thundering ever closer to the Oder. Himmler sends frantic orders to reinforce the eastern lines, but his commands meet silence or half-hearted compliance. Without Hitler's iron will, and with Himmler's lack of military genius, the German defense collapses at terrifying speed. In the West, the Allies exploit the chaos. Reports of Hitler's death, though shrouded in uncertainty, embolden Eisenhower's forces. Operation Cobra breaks the stalemate in Normandy, unleashing a breakout that sends German units reeling. American and British tanks roll through France with renewed vigor. For the first time, Allied commanders glimpse the tantalizing possibility of ending the war before Christmas. Yet amid the carnage, diplomacy stirs. Word reaches London and Washington of Himmler's secret feelers for peace. Desperate to save what remains of Germany, he sends envoys through neutral channels, offering to surrender to the Western Allies if allowed to continue fighting the Soviets. Churchill fumes at the cynicism. Roosevelt rejects any deal that spares the Nazi elite. Unconditional surrender remains our policy, he declares. Stalin, informed of these backdoor overtures, is enraged. His response is swift and brutal. Accelerate the offensive. Take Berlin at any cost. As autumn bleeds into winter, the Third Reich disintegrates in fire and ruin. Himmler clings to power with the fanaticism of a drowning man, but his regime is a grotesque shadow, ruled by fear, racked by betrayal. The SS wages a merciless terror campaign at home, even as cities burn under Allied bombs. Yet nothing can halt the avalanche. By December, Allied forces stand on the Rhine. In the east, the Red Army storms into Poland. And in the German heartland, Ordinary citizens whisper a bitter truth. The war is lost. The end comes in the spring of 1945, as it did in our history, but with a different face at the center. Berlin falls not with Hitler's suicide in the bunker, but with Himmler's capture, dragged from a farmhouse in northern Germany, his spectacles shattered, his hollow dreams in tatters. Tried as the architect of terror, he hangs before the eyes of a world that barely knew his name a year earlier. The SS, once the iron fist of the Reich, lies broken in the rubble. And what of the conspirators who dared to dream of a different Germany? Their uprising failed, yet their bullet-ridden bodies plant seeds that will bear fruit in the years to come. In this alternate timeline, as in reality, July 20th becomes a symbol, not of victory, but of courage against tyranny. A whisper of what might have been if destiny had tilted by a fraction. Would the assassination of Hitler in 1944 have shortened the war? Yes, by months perhaps. Would it have spared Germany's cities from annihilation? Possibly. But would it have erased the crimes, the horrors, the rivers of blood already spilled? Number history teaches us a harsh truth. Even when one man falls, the machinery he built grinds on until it shatters under its own weight. The world after 1945 is still divided, still scarred. The Cold War still rises from the ruins. The Iron Curtain still descends, and millions still live in the shadow of choices made long before the bomb exploded in the wolf's lair. For in the end, history is not the story of one man, but of all who follow him, for better or worse.